The sound of shattered glass and angry voices chased Zoe Daniels onto the dusty main street of Copper Creek, Arizona Territory, 1878. She stumbled forward, clutching her meager belongings wrapped in a tattered shawl, feeling the weight of every stare that followed her exit from the general store. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as the shopkeeper's final words rang in her ears. "You're nothing but a burden on this town. Your father's debts ain't our problem." Zoe quickened her pace, desperate to escape the whispers and judgmental glances. At 22, she'd known hardship, but nothing like the past 3 months since her father's passing. The debts he'd hidden, the mortgage on their small ranch that had been foreclosed, and now the final indignity of being turned away when seeking work. The afternoon sun beat down relentlessly as she reached the edge of town. Zoe had no destination in mind, only the burning need to escape. Her once fine dress, now patched and faded, clung to her slender frame. The single trunk containing all her worldly possessions had been seized by creditors, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a few personal items. A mile outside of town, exhaustion and thirst forced her to rest beneath the sparse shade of a mesquite tree. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford, not when survival demanded every ounce of her strength. The distant sound of hoofbeats made her tense. Travelers could mean danger for a woman alone, especially one with no protection. Zoe ducked behind the tree, watching as a single rider approached along the dusty trail. The man rode tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the azure sky. His horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion, moved with powerful grace. As they drew closer, Zoe could make out more details. Well-worn leather chaps, a dusty Stetson pulled low, and the glint of what might be a marshal's badge on his vest. Her hiding place proved inadequate when the horse suddenly nickered and turned toward her tree. The rider pulled up, his eyes scanning the sparse vegetation until they landed on her. "Madam, you all right there?" His voice carried across the distance, deep and resonant but gentle. Zoe hesitated, then stepped into view. There was little point in hiding now. "Yes, sir, just resting a moment." He dismounted in one fluid motion, removing his hat to reveal a shock of sandy brown hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. He couldn't be much older than 30, with a face weathered by sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way. "Cole Anderson," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "Deputy Marshal out of Tucson." "Zoe Daniels," she replied, trying to straighten her appearance, painfully aware of her disheveled state. His eyes took in her dusty dress, the small bundle of possessions, and the distance from town. "Seems an odd place for a lady to be taking a rest, Miss Daniels." "Copper Creek's not known for its hospitality, but even they've got a proper place for travelers to sit." "I'm not exactly welcome there anymore," she admitted, pride making her chin lift despite her circumstances. Cole's expression shifted, a furrow appearing between his brows. "Been run out." "Something like that." Zoe looked away. "My father died owing money to half the businesses in town. When I couldn't pay his debts, they seized our ranch. Now I'm just unwanted." "And where are you headed?" he asked, his voice softening. The question hit her like a physical blow. "I don't know," she whispered, the truth of her situation suddenly overwhelming. "I truly don't know." Cole was silent for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that made her want to shrink away. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. Whatever judgment he passed, she would face it with what dignity she had left. "My ranch is about 15 miles west," he said finally. "My housekeeper could use some help with the cooking and cleaning. It's honest work, Miss Daniels, if you're willing." Hope and suspicion warred within her. "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Because 20 years ago I was the one standing in the dust with nowhere to go. Someone gave me a chance." He extended his hand. "I'm just passing it along." Zoe hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His palm was calloused but warm, his grip firm yet gentle. As he helped her mount his horse before swinging up behind her, she couldn't help but wonder if this unexpected kindness might be the beginning of something more than just survival. The journey to Cole's ranch passed in relative silence. Zoe was acutely aware of his presence behind her, his arm occasionally brushing hers as he guided the horse across the rugged terrain. The landscape transformed gradually from dusty plains to rolling hills dotted with scrub oak and pine as they climbed in elevation. "It's beautiful out here," she ventured, breaking the silence as they crested a ridge that revealed a sweeping vista of the valley below. "That it is," Cole agreed. "First time I saw this land, I knew I'd found home. You weren't born here?" She asked, grateful for the conversation to distract from her troubles. "Born in Missouri, came west after the war looking for something." He paused. "Something I couldn't quite name, peace maybe." "Did you find it?" His chuckle rumbled against her back. "Most days." The land has a way of settling a man's soul, even when everything else is chaos. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, a modest ranch house came into view. It wasn't grand, but it was well maintained, with a wide porch and smoke curling from the chimney. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and a small herd of cattle grazed in a distant pasture. "It's not much," Cole said as they approached, "but it's paid for." "It's lovely," Zoe replied honestly. After months of uncertainty, the solid presence of the house was deeply appealing. A plump, gray-haired woman emerged from the house as they rode into the yard, wiping her hands on her apron. Her weathered face broke into a smile at the sight of Cole, then shifted to curiosity as she noticed Zoe. "Mrs. Abernathy," Cole called as he dismounted and helped Zoe down. "We've got a guest who will be staying with us for a while." The woman's sharp eyes took in Zoe's appearance, but her expression remained kind. "About time we had another woman around here. These men don't appreciate good cooking nearly enough." Zoe felt a wave of relief at the warm reception. "I'm very grateful for the opportunity, Mrs. Abernathy. Martha, dear, we don't stand on ceremony out here," she turned to Cole. "I've got stew on and there's plenty, you get Miss." "Daniels, Zoe Daniels," Cole supplied. "Get Miss Daniels settled while I set another place." With that, Martha bustled back into the house. Cole led Zoe to a small cabin set apart from the main house. This was the original homestead cabin. It's simple, but it's yours for as long as you need it. The interior was indeed basic: a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt, a small table with a basin, a chest of drawers, and a pot-bellied stove. But it was clean and dry, with a window that looked out over the valley. "I don't know how to thank you," Zoe said, turning to face him. "No need." Cole shifted, suddenly awkward in a way he hadn't been before. "Get settled. Come up to the main house when you're ready for supper." After he left, Zoe sank onto the bed, the magnitude of the day's events finally hitting her. From destitution to shelter in the span of hours, it seemed almost miraculous. She allowed herself a moment of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, her luck had finally turned. The days that followed established a new rhythm to Zoe's life. She rose with the sun, helping Martha prepare breakfast for Cole and the two ranch hands, Tom and Hank. The men would work the cattle, mend fences, or tend to the countless other tasks required to keep the ranch running, while Zoe assisted Martha with cooking, cleaning, and tending the vegetable garden. It was hard work, but satisfying in a way her previous life had never been. Each night, she fell into bed exhausted but content, her dreams no longer haunted by worry. Cole, she discovered, was a man of few words but deep convictions. He treated his ranch hands fairly, spoke gently to his horses, and seemed to carry the weight of his position as deputy marshal with a quiet dignity. He was often away for days at a time, tracking outlaws or escorting prisoners, but the ranch remained a haven of peace under Martha's capable management. 2 weeks after her arrival, Zoe was gathering eggs in the henhouse when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Peering through the doorway, she saw Cole returning, but he wasn't alone. A young woman rode beside him, her elaborate dress and pristine appearance marking her as someone of means. Zoe felt a strange tightness in her chest as she watched Cole help the woman dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. The woman laughed at something he said, placing a gloved hand on his arm with casual familiarity. "That's Eliza Thornton," Martha's voice came from behind her, making Zoe start. "Her father owns the bank in Tucson." "Oh," Zoe said, trying to sound nonchalant. "They seem close." Martha's knowing look said she wasn't fooled. Her father's been pushing for a match for years. "Cole's never shown much interest, but she's persistent." Zoe nodded, returning to her task with forced concentration. She had no right to feel disappointed. Cole had offered her employment and shelter, nothing more. Whatever his personal affairs, they were none of her concern. Still, she couldn't help but notice how Cole's eyes sought her out at supper that evening, even as Eliza dominated the conversation with tales of Tucson society. There was a question in his gaze that Zoe couldn't decipher, a tension that hadn't been there before. Later that night, unable to sleep, Zoe stepped outside her cabin. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. She wrapped her shawl tighter against the chill and started walking, letting her feet carry her toward a small rise overlooking the ranch. To her surprise, a figure already occupied her destination. Cole sat on a fallen log, his profile illuminated by moonlight. "I'm sorry," she said, turning to leave. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not," he replied quickly. "Please join me." Hesitantly, she settled beside him, leaving a respectable distance between them. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "No, it's too beautiful a night to waste on sleep," he smiled at that. "My thoughts exactly." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the night sounds creating a soothing backdrop. "Miss Thornton seems lovely," Zoe finally said, immediately regretting bringing up the subject. Cole's expression tightened. "She is, in her way. Her father wants you to marry her." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Cole sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Eliza's father thinks every eligible bachelor should be lining up for her hand, and I suppose many would consider it a good match. But not you." He turned to look at her directly, his eyes searching hers. "I've never been much for society matches. I believe marriage should be about more than combining properties or social standing." "What should it be about then?" Zoe asked softly, understanding. "Respect." He paused. "The kind of feeling that makes you want to be a better person just by being near them." The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. "That sounds rare." "It is." His gaze held hers. "But worth waiting for, I think." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Cole cleared his throat and stood. "It's getting late. I should escort you back." As they walked back toward her cabin, their hands brushed once, twice, before Cole gently took hers in his. The simple contact sent warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. At her door, he released her hand reluctantly. "Good night, Zoe." "Good night, Cole." That night, her dreams were filled with blue eyes and possibilities she hardly dared to name. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Cole announced at breakfast that he needed to ride into Tucson for supplies and would be gone for several days. Eliza, who had stayed the night in the guest room, would be returning with him before he continued on his deputy marshal duties. "Perhaps Miss Daniels would like to join us," Eliza suggested with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm sure she must miss town life after being so isolated out here." Before Zoe could formulate a polite refusal, Cole spoke. "Zoe's been a tremendous help to Martha. I wouldn't want to deprive the ranch of her assistance." The exchange wasn't lost on Zoe nor, she suspected, on anyone else at the table. Eliza's smile tightened almost imperceptibly while Martha busied herself with the coffee pot, a knowing look in her eyes. After breakfast, Zoe retreated to the laundry shed, grateful for the mindless task of scrubbing clothes. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear Cole approach until his shadow fell across the washboard. "Got a minute?" he asked, looking uncharacteristically nervous. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Of course. I wanted to apologize for Eliza. She can be territorial. "There's no need to explain," Zoe said quickly. "Your personal affairs are your own business." "That's just it." Cole stepped closer. "I'd like them to be your business at least a little." Zoe's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'd like to court you properly, Zoe Daniels, if you'd allow it." The directness of his statement left her momentarily speechless. "But I have nothing. No family name, no dowry. I'm living on your charity." Cole's expression softened. "You're living on your own hard work. And I don't give a damn about family names or dowries. I care about the woman who sings to herself while gathering eggs, who reads to Martha in the evenings, who looks at this harsh land and sees beauty." He reached out, his calloused fingers gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not asking for promises, just a chance to see if what I feel might be something you could share." Zoe leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "People will talk, they'll say you took advantage." "Let them talk, we know the truth." Opening her eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity in his gaze. "Then yes," she whispered, "I'd like that very much." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I'll be back in 3 days, we'll start then." After Cole departed with a reluctant Eliza, the ranch settled into its routine. But for Zoe, everything had changed. Each task was infused with anticipation, each sunset bringing Cole's return one day closer. On the second day, as Zoe and Martha were preserving peaches from the small orchard, Martha broke their companionable silence. "He's a good man, Cole Anderson." Zoe glanced up, her hands sticky with peach juice. "Yes, he is. Not perfect, mind you. Stubborn as the day is long and he works too hard." Martha's eyes twinkled. "But he's got a heart bigger than Arizona Territory." "I've noticed," Zoe said softly. "I've known that boy since he was 23, riding in half dead with a bullet in his shoulder, nursed him back to health myself." Martha sealed another jar with practiced efficiency. "In all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you," Zoe blushed. "It's all happened so quickly." "Some things don't need time, child, they just need the right souls meeting." The older woman's words stayed with Zoe through the evening and into the next day. By mid-afternoon, she found herself watching the trail, anticipation making it impossible to focus on her chores. When a rider appeared on the horizon, her heart leapt only to plummet when she realized it wasn't Cole but a stranger on an exhausted horse. The man rode straight to the main house, calling out as he dismounted. "Is Deputy Anderson here? It's urgent." Zoe hurried forward. "He's in Tucson." "What's happened?" The rider, a young man barely out of his teens, looked stricken. "Ambush. The Garrett gang jumped them in Skeleton Canyon. Marshal Johnson sent me to find Deputy Anderson for backup." "Them?" Zoe's voice sharpened. "Who was with the marshal?" "Deputy Anderson and some banker's daughter. The lady got away clean, she's the one who rode for help. But the deputy and marshal were pinned down with at least 5 of Garrett's men firing on them." The world seemed to tilt beneath Zoe's feet. Cole was in danger, possibly injured or worse. The thought was unbearable. Martha appeared at her side, her face grim. "Tom and Hank are checking the south pasture. They won't be back until sundown." "How far to Skeleton Canyon?" Zoe asked the messenger. 20 miles southeast, but you can't, I can and I will." Zoe's voice was steel. "Martha, can you pack medical supplies and ammunition for Cole's rifle?" The older woman nodded without hesitation. "The bay mare's fastest, I'll saddle her." Within 30 minutes, Zoe was mounted and ready, Cole's spare Colt revolver tucked into her belt, his rifle in a scabbard on the saddle. The messenger, Zoe and Mrs. Abernathy had convinced to rest before following, had drawn her a rough map. "Be careful, child," Martha said, her eyes worried but proud. "Bring him home." The ride was punishing. Zoe pushed the mare as hard as she dared, following the messenger's directions across increasingly rugged terrain. The sun beat down mercilessly, but fear for Cole drove her forward without pause. It was late afternoon when she heard the first distant crack of gunfire. Slowing the exhausted horse, she approached more cautiously, eventually tethering the mare in a sheltered gully and continuing on foot. Skeleton Canyon lived up to its name, a narrow passage between rocky cliffs, with sparse vegetation offering little cover. From her vantage point on a ridge, Zoe could see the standoff below. Two figures were pinned behind a rock outcropping, while periodic gunfire erupted from a position higher up the canyon wall. Her heart leapt when she recognized Cole, alive but clearly injured, a dark stain spreading across his left shoulder. Beside him, an older man, presumably Marshal Johnson, was grimly reloading a revolver, his movements suggesting he too was wounded. Zoe took stock of the situation with surprising clarity. The outlaws had the advantage of higher ground, but they were focused entirely on the canyon floor, if she could work her way around to a position behind them. Moving with painstaking care, Zoe circled wide, using every bit of cover the sparse landscape offered. The rifle was heavy and unfamiliar in her hands, but her father had taught her to shoot years ago. She prayed those lessons would be enough. It took nearly an hour to maneuver into position. By then, the gunfire had become sporadic, ammunition clearly running low on both sides. From her new vantage point, Zoe could see three men clustered behind a rocky ledge, their attention fixed on Cole and the marshal below. Taking a deep breath, she steadied the rifle against a boulder and aimed at the ground near the outlaws, not wanting to kill if she could avoid it. The rifle's report echoed through the canyon, sending chips of rock flying near the men's position. The effect was immediate. The outlaws scrambled for cover, confused by fire from an unexpected direction. Zoe fired again, this time closer to their position. Below, Cole's head snapped up at the new development. She saw him scanning the ridgeline, trying to identify the new player in the standoff. Zoe fired a third time, deliberately wide, then called out, "Cole, it's Zoe, 3 men on the west ridge." She saw his momentary shock, followed by a grim nod of understanding. He signaled something to the marshal, then raised his voice. "We've got you surrounded, Garrett. Throw down your weapons." The outlaws, now believing themselves caught in a crossfire, conferred briefly. One of them shouted back, "How do we know you won't shoot us anyway? You have my word as a U.S. Marshal," the older man called. "Surrender now and you'll get a fair trial." Long seconds passed. Then, one by one, rifles appeared over the edge of their cover, dropped to clatter on the rocks below. "Coming out with hands up," one of them called. Zoe kept the rifle trained on them as they emerged, hands raised. Cole and the marshal moved with painful slowness to secure the men, binding their wrists with leather straps. Only when all three were secured did Zoe finally emerge from her position, half sliding down the rocky slope in her haste to reach Cole. He turned at her approach, his face a mixture of disbelief, concern, and something that made her breath catch pride. "Zoe," he said, her name rough in his throat. "How did you—" "A messenger came to the ranch," she explained, reaching him at last, her eyes fixed on his bloodied shoulder. "You're hurt." "It's not bad," he assured her, though his pallor suggested otherwise. "Just a graze." The marshal, an older man with iron-gray hair and shrewd eyes, looked between them with open curiosity. "This is your ranch hand, Anderson?" "This," Cole said, his gaze never leaving Zoe's face, "is the woman I intend to marry, if she'll have me." Zoe's eyes widened. "Cole, I know it's sudden," he continued, taking her hand in his blood-stained one. "I know people will talk, but today made something very clear to me." His voice roughened. "Life out here is uncertain. I don't want to waste another day not telling you how I feel." "And how is that?" she whispered, hardly daring to believe. "That from the moment I found you by that mesquite tree, something changed. Everyone in town saw you as a burden, but all I saw was a blessing." His free hand cupped her cheek. "You're my blessing, Zoe Daniels. From this day on, if you'll let me, I want to be yours." Tears blurred her vision. "I almost lost you today, but you didn't. You saved me instead." His smile was tender despite his pain. "Say yes, Zoe, be my wife." "Yes," she breathed, her heart so full it might burst. "Yes, Cole Anderson, I will." Their kiss, witnessed by a bemused marshal and 3 sullen outlaws, was brief but filled with promise. When they parted, Cole swayed slightly, reminding Zoe of his injury. "We need to get you to a doctor," she said firmly. "The lady's right," the marshal agreed. "Though I'm curious how you plan to transport 3 prisoners and 2 wounded lawmen." As if in answer, the sound of approaching horses echoed through the canyon. Moments later, Tom and Hank appeared, accompanied by several townsmen from Tucson. "Mrs. Abernathy sent us when the messenger finally made it back," Tom explained, dismounting. "Seems like we missed all the excitement." "Not all of it," Cole said, his arm around Zoe's waist. "You're just in time to congratulate me on my engagement." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The prisoners were secured, wounds were temporarily bandaged, and the entire party began the slow journey back to Tucson, where a doctor and the town jail awaited. Zoe rode beside Cole, their horses close enough that their legs occasionally touched. Despite his injury, he sat straight in the saddle, his eyes frequently seeking hers as if to reassure himself she was still there. "What will people say?" she asked quietly during a rest stop. "About us," Cole's hand found hers. "They'll say I'm the luckiest man in Arizona territory." And they'll be right. And Eliza's father, won't he be angry to lose such an advantageous match? Probably, Cole admitted with a wry smile. "But he's a banker, not a gunslinger. I think I can handle his disapproval." Zoe laughed, the sound bright in the gathering dusk. "I never imagined my life taking this turn." "Neither did I." Cole's expression grew serious. "But I'm grateful every day that it did." 2 months later, on a perfect autumn morning, Zoe stood on the porch of what was now truly her home. Cole's wound had healed cleanly, leaving only a scar to remind them of how nearly they'd lost each other. The ranch had flourished under their combined care, with plans for expansion already taking shape. Inside, preparations for their wedding celebration were underway. Martha had outdone herself with the feast, and guests would soon arrive from neighboring ranches, and even from Tucson though not. Zoe noted with a touch of amusement the Thornton family. Strong arms encircled her from behind, and Cole's chin rested on top of her head. "Having second thoughts, Mrs. Anderson," the name, made official just hours earlier in a simple ceremony performed by the circuit preacher, still sent a thrill through her. Not a single one. He turned her in his arms, his eyes as blue and boundless as the Arizona sky. "I still can't believe you're mine." "Believe it," she whispered, rising on tiptoe to brush her lips against his. "I'm exactly where I belong." As the first guests began to arrive, Zoe took Cole's hand and together they stepped forward to greet their future no longer burdened, but blessed beyond measure by the love they'd found in the wild, unforgiving beauty of the western frontier.